Empowerment is defined as the authority or power given to someone to do something, or the process of becoming stronger and more confident, especially in controlling one's life and claiming one's rights. And yet, when the term comes up in relation to feminism, it is often used in relation to the desire to wear makeup, to dress in a certain way, or to take part in actions which support the patriarchy, particularly through the maintenance of harmful stereotypes and expected behaviors. So let's take a look at what is considered empowering to women.
It is really weird to me that so many of the images that we elevate as being the epitome of...
Hi, I'm Bunny, your professor of Bimbology. Welcome to Bimbology 101. Let's talk about this. I think this is an incredibly valid critique, and it shows a very important side of the community that we always have to take into consideration. Bimbohood was started as a patriarchal concept. It was started to demean women. It was started to put them into boxes of having this Madonna horror complex and simultaneously demonizing the bimbo whilst having her the peak of sexual attraction in the male gaze. But reclamation and reintegration of these concepts into a new idealized version of a bimbo can be incredibly healthy to creating a valid and positive example of hyperfemininity that people can identify with and have fun with. Just my thoughts, but fair point.
I'm calling for a new wave of feminism. We did the whole women can work too. We've done it. We did great. I'm grateful. Can we skip to the part where women they exist and the government pays them to exist because we are just that amazing? Can we get to that one? Can we start the new wave of feminism for that one? I don't want to do anything. I want to make my own money and not do anything so the government pays us. Can we start that one, please?
The bimbofication trend has constantly been reported on as being empowering by multiple sources. The Daily Utah Chronicle defines bimbofication as being marked by a few key attributes: hyperfemininity, high standards, and ditziness, and claims that, contradictory to the original realm of early 2000s Paris Hilton, modern bimbos aren't financially stable because of a daddy figure, but rather through hard-earned money, often by exploiting men, and sometimes through sex work. In other words, she's playing the man who gives her money because of her hyperfemininity and identification with sexist stereotypes, such as women being obsessed with appearance, being shopaholics, promiscuous, and unintelligent, because he gives her money for doing so. But doing what men desire and fulfilling their sexual fantasies is not empowering. It does not grant authority or power, nor does it give actual political or economic rights or security. Her money is contingent on the whims of the men who give it to her and her ability to appeal to male sexual attraction. Once she is deemed unattractive, those avenues of profitability disappear. In addition, identifying as a negative stereotype, no matter how much one personally likes to do so, is not liberating in any sense. Regardless of the personal reasons for doing so, the outward impact is just the same. The so-called irony of pretending to be a hypersexual idiot is lost on the misogynistic men who genuinely believed in these stereotypes, in the same way that a black person fulfilling racial stereotypes will be taken by a racist as proof of their already held ideals. Still, articles like The Bimbo Aesthetic, How It Became a Way of Empowerment, push the idea that perpetuating stereotypes is empowering and beneficial. The article reads, "As the word was first used to describe them, a bimbo is still usually associated with the dumb blonde concept in a very sexist way. But as we are reclaiming it, it is now for everyone, and self-describing as a bimbo makes you part of a movement that includes the queer community and hyperfemininity. So much so that the people who identify with it can even call themselves bimos, thembos, and himbos, describing bisexual people, non-binaries, and feminine men respectively. Or for anyone in the queer community who personally identifies with it. The bimbofication is really not that complicated. It is actually about being hot and beautiful, believing you're hot and beautiful, and most of all, feeling hot and beautiful without overthinking it. If you really think about it in a deeper way, the bimbofication is actually a journey of self-love, as much as that idea seems like a saturated, overused one. It is a little different when combined with the bimbo aesthetic, as it becomes about being completely comfortable with being yourself, not ashamed of being feminine and sexual. If this was really a choice made within a vacuum, free of the patriarchal world which would reward such behavior with surface-level benefits, such as male approval and short-term monetary gain, then why would bimbofication center around what men find attractive?
I remember one day I'm really happy that we finally reached the point in our lives where we finally see bimbo feminism for what it is. Now, I have made a bunch of videos on the topics of girl math, girl dinner, girl science, and whatever, and I believe that all of those labels are extremely reductive. It's one thing making fun of yourself for being bad at math or science. I myself do it all the time. I've never been a fan of maths. I have always been bad at it. But making an entire sub-ideology out of it and claiming that it's female empowerment is extremely disingenuous. Also, attributing the qualities such as being bad at maths or being bad at science or being a bad driver to only women, and then in the same breath saying that it's not misogynistic because it is female empowerment is so dishonest. But I digress. I'm pretty sure the people that are familiar with the bimbo feminist movement have probably seen the What is a Bimbo video by Chrissy Chilipeka. But assuming some of you haven't seen it, in that video, Chrissy explains what a Gen Z bimbo is. And in that video, she mentions that a Gen Z bimbo is a radical leftist, which is very interesting, because it would be quite logical to assume that a radical leftist is a socialist/communist. But as we can see from Chrissy's content, she doesn't really fit into the standard of a radical leftist that she claims to be. Because unlike a radical leftist, Chrissy Chilipeka actively participates in consumerist culture. Which is not to say that she's not a feminist, not to mention that in the current day and age it is very, very difficult to not participate in consumerist culture. It would be very disingenuous of me to say that I don't. That just tells me that Chrissy Chilipeka is an influencer first and a leftist second. Back to that video. Chrissy mentions that she is pro-sex work, which does spark a lot of controversy within the feminist movement, especially when in the same breath you claim to be a radical leftist. A radical leftist recognizes that sex work and the pornography industry are built on exploiting women's bodies and the whole pro-sex work stance, and saying how sex work on the whole is female empowerment is not a radical feminist standpoint. As feminists in this day and age, we always try to bring sex work into the equation and normalize it as if it directly benefits women. But in reality, it's not something that women benefit from. Quite often, people that go into sex work voluntarily, by choice, often come out and say that they felt victimized by it. The idea of feminism, at least to me, is that a body of a human being is not something that can be bought and sold. Now, I understand that this argument will spark so much controversy, because the same can be said about all forms of entertainment. But I'll argue that some other time. Girls as young as 18 years old being lured into a trap of self-employment and female empowerment by a multi-million-dollar corporation that is OF is not and will never be something that I as a feminist agree with.
Why is the bimbo aesthetic linked to misogyny via the kink it plays into? Why would it play into exactly what misogynists think of women? That we are unintelligent, hypersexual for the purpose of male satisfaction, and easily controlled via money. This is closely linked to the claim that so-called sex work can be empowering. The term sex work is used to refer to everything from selling lingerie pictures to actual full-contact sexual encounters, often making it difficult to ascertain what is being discussed. However, it is easy to see how, despite claims of sex work being empowering or helping to explore sexuality, the women involved often end up hurt, taken advantage of, abused, or killed. For the sake of clarity, I will use the term pornography and prostitution, which will include strippers, prostitutes, phone sex operators, and anything that might be considered a sexual service. Proponents of prostitution and pornography, such as Alyssa Persusi in Transformative Power of Sex Work, argued that the transformative power of sex work originates in the dancer's control over what she reveals and/or conceals during the customer-dancer encounter. The sense of control gives way to a sense of privacy and agency that is ultimately the grounds by which she can feel empowered. Others argue that the issue of prostitution is merely that it is illegal and stigmatized. They suggest that sex work can be very profitable for women, and many women may enjoy work that allows them to creatively express their sexuality. Sex work can allow human beings a way to safely explore their sexual desires in ways they cannot through the current social norm of heterosexual, monogamous relationships. The sex work industry and its workers need not be chastised by society that clings to Puritan ideals of what is moral. Those who argue for prostitution and porn seem to center on the monetary gain in the idea of reclamation. Namely, that despite being for the sexual gratification of men, the action of participating in prostitution or pornography lets the woman remain in control of her sexuality as she controls who has access to it. This ignores the reality of pornography and sexual violence, as 85% of women involved in prostitution report having been physically abused by a family member. Previous experiences of abuse can leave women with very low self-esteem and self-worth. Women involved in prostitution are at risk of very serious violence, particularly from the men who buy sex and from the men who may be exploiting or coercing them into it. Women in prostitution are 18 times more likely to be murdered than the general female population. The majority, 74%, of women involved in prostitution have experienced violence from the men who buy sex, and with more than half reporting having been raped or sexually assaulted. It ignores that sex is different from any other good or service. If it were the same as any other job, then you could offer the service to family, friends, or your children. But unlike a job such as mowing the lawn, doing so would be incest.
My desire to feel really empowered by my body was absolutely the driving force behind my sex work. I think when it first started, I was looking for something that would make me feel more at home in my skin. You know, I have always been scared of mirrors, and that's a result of eating disorders in my past. Because when you look in a mirror, it's really easy to see one part of you, especially the parts of you that you are maybe less fond of or have had a harder time accepting. And so putting myself in front of a camera allowed me to see my whole self and not super hyper focus on one part of me. It was an opportunity to see all of myself and to feel good about what I was seeing.
I would say that the major production porn companies are all predatory and abusive and unethical and prey on vulnerable young women. And even me saying this, I already know that some of the responses back are going to be from women in the industry that say, no, it's not. No, it's not. It's great. It's fantastic. Everyone is so nice. I love this company. I love all of this. And to be honest with you, I think that rhetoric is grooming. I think that if you're going to enter the industry and you're going to be an advocate for it, it has to come with a caveat. And that caveat needs to be, you shouldn't enter the industry unless you've already kind of been in the industry. It shouldn't be a first option for you. The age to go into the industry should not be 18. You're putting contracts in front of 18-year-old girls that have the words in perpetuity on them. Do you know how dangerous and predatory that is? These are 3, 4, 5-page contracts.
That is a former adult entertainment actress known as Mia Khalifa. I believe her real name is Sarah, but I respect her so much because this is the second interview I have watched of her where she talks about how exploitative the adult entertainment industry is of women. And I have known women, I have had a friend that went into the adult entertainment industry and say it's a terrible place to be. They never wanted to end up there. They didn't ever plan to stay there long term. But then there's also women that say, oh, it's so great. It's so empowering, which I will never believe. I will never believe that. But I think it's so important for women who have been hurt by the adult entertainment industry to really come out and talk about how awful and not empowering that is. And I do know that there's women that say, oh, it's so empowering to be able to make money this way. I will never think that it's actually empowering, objectified by numerous men who are pleasuring themselves to your image, to your sexual acts. I will never believe that's empowering. Even when you are like the success story, I still don't believe that's empowering. Nothing about porn, nothing about adult entertainment, sexually explicit content is ever, in my opinion, going to be empowering to women. It is not empowering for women to be objectified, for them to be sex objects. And to think that there's men out there that view you as more than just an object whenever you are in that world, I think is fooling yourself. I think the money is what really makes people say, oh, this is so empowering. But at the end of the day, that's still, I will never believe that's empowering.
Some men have bought content and even sent it to the victims' fathers. Many images on OnlyFans are non-consensual or the result of trafficking. It is well known that there are many underage girls on OnlyFans, and as the Anti-Human Trafficking Intelligence Initiative reports, ATII stated that within 1.5 hours, the researchers found a high volume of OnlyFans.com profiles possessing commonly understood indicators of CSAM and/or sex trafficking. Examples of what they found include pictures of girls whose appearance and body type suggest they are underage, accounts advertising with terms and descriptions that commonly denote CSAM, conversations between potential sex traffickers discussing how they like to use OnlyFans to monetize their victims, and creators sporting signs of abuse and coercion, such as bruising, tattoos known to be used for sex trafficking, expressions of pain, blank gazes, and signs of being under the influence, and much more. And of course, the takeaway from the normalization of selling nudes and sex is that women and girls as a class are for sale. If prostitution is a legitimate job, then sexual harassment becomes a job offer. Men know this well. A whole subreddit exists to make fun of the women who are in the industry called Humiliated versus Empowered. And those interviews where they claim to be so happy and empowered with their work are rendered silly and laughable amongst the pornographic clips interspersed within.
From this like old school feminist, it was a long process for me to like deconstruct all of my own barriers that I had.
I had huge conflict within myself because I felt it was wrong. I felt pornography was a tool of the patriarchy to suppress women and abuse them and give a bad representation of their sexuality.
There's no sexual act that I should not be doing because it's not feminist or whatever. The ultimate like symbol of like a woman being exploited by all of these men, right? I love gangbangs, and I've been having gangbangs fantasies since as far as I can remember. And of course, always feeling conflicted a little bit about those fantasies, just to show like how much power and how much joy this person that is in the center of a gang can have and enjoy. I'm a princess also as a sap, and it's like, it is the ultimative scenario. Like everyone is there for you and everyone is pleasing you and you're the queen.
On the other end of the spectrum, Tradwives or stay-at-home girlfriends seem to think that their decision to become reliant on a man in exchange for domestic and sexual favors is empowering. The domestic sphere, which women have spent generations fighting to leave, is being promoted as empowering due to dissatisfaction with the increasing demands placed on women, as entering the workforce does not decrease the amount of domestic labor expected of women. Because the thought of their partners picking up the slack seems so out of reach, they instead blame feminism, or alternatively, try to claim that their decision is empowering and unrelated to the socialization that would direct women to find their highest purpose in homemaking. For example, a number of women who identify as tradwives lament those connotations have become associated with the modern movement, and worry they will be typecast for their decision. But through social media, they have found a network of like-minded women where they can celebrate and commiserate the challenges of day-to-day life together. I would say it is empowering for many, especially since many of these homemakers or those who desire this lifestyle do not get support from family or friends in their real life, says Nikki. Often, things claimed to be empowering are just beneficial to men, sexualizing, demeaning, capitalist, and don't offer any actual power. Instead, what is labeled empowering for women, often painted with a rainbow brush, is just a rephrasing of sexist and misogynistic harmful ideas, made palatable for a modern audience of would-be feminists who prefer to feel good over actually creating change. Because change is uncomfortable. Because being gender nonconforming and putting themselves first wouldn't actually receive any support from women ingrained in the patriarchy, and certainly not from men. What is actually empowering? Being politically active and volunteering with groups that can cause legislation to be impacted by your interests, such as the Women's Declaration International Group, or volunteering with a local women's shelter, voting in elections, both local and federal, having your own income and not relying on another person for sustenance. Truthfully, it all comes down to the same old question: who benefits? This, dear viewers, is where we part. I had this idea a long time ago, and to be honest, I was like, I'm pretty sure I made the video on empowerment already, right? And I did not. Or I did not do it in this manner, at least. But it's something that's always gotten on my nerves. It's like when I'm looking at some of these trends, like you look at advertisements for makeup, and it'll be like, this is a feminist lipstick. This is a feminist way of shaving. It's your choice to shave, and we're not going to have any class consciousness at all. And it gets on my nerves because, like, this isn't empowering. It doesn't do anything. What's empowering is like being a politician, voting, having actual money, owning land, property. Those are actually empowering things, not dressing cute because it makes you feel good. Just because something makes you feel good doesn't mean it's empowering. Anyhow, if you guys have any comments, questions, or concerns, let me know in the comment section down below. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.